We're back now with a midweek mental health boost. A brief moment of darkness for TikTok sent some social media users into a frenzy over the weekend.
Yeah, Dr. Laura Saunders is a psychologist at the Institute of Living. She is joining us now to talk about guidelines when it comes to social media, mental health, and specifically our teens. Doctor, thanks for being here. I did not care when TikTok went away, but my kids were definitely like, oh my gosh, it really went away.
Happy Wednesday. Hello, friends. Yes, and we are talking about the frenzy around social media. I don't really need much of an excuse to go on a whole tangent on social media because it's really changed the way our young people change their brains and change the way they see the world. And I know a lot of young people and some adults too, actually many adults were in a bit of a frenzy around the possible loss of TikTok.
I know people who literally we couldn't speak to them because the hours leading up to the ban, they were like, I have to get my TikTok in. And this is the only time I'm going to get to do it. So just leave me alone.
Right. I mean, that's the level of frenzy that it creates for people. And, you know, the difficulty in detaching yourself or, you know, from that doom scrolling, which is just like, it's mindless and it's, you know, the algorithms are set up to sort of hook you in and then you're in.
Yeah. So what do we do about it? Because I was driving my...
That's the golden question.
I was driving my son and his friend out to go skiing, which I was very happy that, you know, they're going to be skiing and not on social media. But they admitted, like he said, his friend was like, gosh, I know. He's like, it's so bad for me, but I can't stop. So if people are feeling that way, what's your advice as a psychologist?
So I recognize that it's really hard. I mean, this is like it is, you know, for people who have addictions, right? It's like gambling. Gambling is set up to hook you in. Right. And that's how these social media apps, they hook you in. And, you know, the algorithms are set up to give you content. You look at this a little bit longer and it gives you content. It's very concerning. And so it really is about setting limits and it's recognizing there's, you know, on most people's phones, smartphones nowadays, you can see how much time you spend on each app and to like use that as a reality check for how overly hooked in you are.
So let's go through, you know, appropriate ages for each of these media sites like Instagram, TikTok, Be Real. I mean, what age? I mean, can we go through some of the sites and give us an appropriate age or if we should be on it at all as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, what we try to do is nothing under 13. There should be no social media under age 13.
Wow.
Which
know, some of these even 14 or 15, you know, so it's really allowing our young people to have a little bit of childhood before they get kind of hooked in. You know, Twitter and Reddits are not even appropriate for teenagers. Common Sense Media is a great source for guidelines on what is or isn't appropriate for children. So Common Sense Media is often a source that I send for parents.
Yeah, I mean, that means basically you're suggesting that all of middle school or most of middle school kids don't have access to this. And we know that that's when they're really using it. What's the downside? How can we really, you know, it's a struggle when parents want to take this away, especially if they didn't set that up in the beginning. So how can we, what's the danger so we can think about adhering to these guidelines?
I mean, the dangers are great because you think about it from a developmental standpoint, young people don't have the judgment. They don't have the judgment to recognize what's real and not real. I mean, I always get concerned when an adult, never mind a teen, starts a sentence with, I saw on TikTok, and then they believe that to be the gospel truth.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. So, I mean, there's no vetting of sources. There's nothing. So they don't have the judgment. So knowing, you know, anything on social media can be made public. There's all sorts of things that can happen where posts are cut or altered. And now with AI, you shouldn't believe anything that's out there.
Yeah.
Right. And you say avoid drama and hurting others.
Right. And that's, I think, you know, where the anonymity, that's where the whole thing of cyberbullying, that's a whole segment in and of itself. Cyberbullying comes in because of anonymity. I can say or do anything because it's not I'm not accountable for it.
All right.
So sometimes people do some really very hurtful things, and young people don't have the emotional strength to overcome a lot of those things.
And we really need to drive this home. I know people say it, but I try to tell my kids, don't put anything on social media, even in the so-called private stories or whatever they think of, if you don't want it on the cover of the newspaper or your principal reading it, because nothing is really private, right?
Nothing is private. Everything can be made public. You know, I've worked with young people who used to have online diaries. And I said, you realize that, you know, it's just one click away where someone can get access to your most private thoughts. Nothing is private on the internet. So recognize that, and really realizing how much time it consumes. And that's time where you're not interacting with people or being active outside. You know, there's so much that it can do that is, in my mind, damaging. And so the more we talk about it and warn people, the better.
And in the last 20 seconds, don't post your location.
Don't post your location, you know, and there's ways to take your location off your photos and, you know, wherever you are, because you never know when there could be some predators out there or just people that don't have good intentions. And so it really is about protecting our young people and allowing them an ability to grow up and have some privacy.
All right. Well, thank you, Doc. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for being
Have a
with
great
us.
day.
We'll take a deeper dive on Kara's Cures. You can see all of Dr. Saunders' mental health information. She gives us a lot of great information, all for free, on the Kara's Cures podcast.
TikTok.
TikTok, yeah. I never really got into it, but
I never did either.
now the kids they were
Yeah, I know.
sort of going to Instagram for a little while, and then they're like, this is for moms.